Good evening, Goldenvale. This is Robin, or as you may know me, Dencree Blackwater. Tonight we have our ninth in this series for Knights versus the World, and this time it is with Akrith, Brian Watts, who is my knight. So we will shoot right into that, I guess. Akrith, who are you and what do you do?
Who am I and what do I do? I am Sir Akrith, Knight of the Crown. A bunch of other little useless titles that couldn't be accompanied to it, but it's not here nor there. I started Amtgard in 1993, back when it was a group of about 6 to 10 of us, and we just got this rule set that lets people hit each other with duct-taped weapons, and me being the youngest lad of the lot of them, because these were all fully grown men, and I was just like 17-year-old me. I was terrified, and so that's why I started playing Wizard, because I was like, I can affect things and not be near anybody. Great. So we did that. There was no kingdoms. There was no concept of knighthood. There wasn't even a whole lot of battle game discussion. It was literally just, we made 2 teams. We went to other sides of the woods, and we played a shatter battle, and that's all that Amtgard was. And for us, it was great. And then Goldenvale has grown and everything else. I myself was in that environment until about 1995. I proceeded to travel all over the place for personal reasons, like all over the country. And I kind of came back to it in 2006, 2007, somewhere around there. So there was about a decade where I wasn't around. And then I just showed up again. Because at the time it was a really convenient way to introduce my spouse to all of my old friends all at one spot.
Works pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. We just showed up at field, and it was just kind of like, hey, this is what I used to do. Here are all these people, and and just kind of slowly just got reintroduced to anything, and just kind of continued on with that. I have, as hinting, a little bit of a spoiler warning, the fact that I am a Knight of the Crown, I've held office a lot. I have held Kingdom Champion twice, Kingdom Regent once, Kingdom Prime Minister once, and Kingdom Monarch 4 times. I thought about running a 5th time just to say that I did it, run it 5 times, and then I decided, no, that's crazy. So I stopped. And then again, life put me in different directions. So my last official reign, I believe, was 2014.
I think so.
My last reign as monarch. It was around this time. And life kind of took me in different places. There was a lot of things that were going on. So I kind of took a pretty much a step back. I needed a big break for going really hard, being in office a lot for 7 years straight, because all of those officerships that I went through was all in that 7-year span.
Oh God. And that was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 4
Yes.
years. So most of those 7 years.
Exactly. And of the 3 years that I wasn't, quote unquote, in office, because of the fact of the way that Goldenvale was, with it being a static crown, and kind of the way that the park numbers and everything were, all of my friends were officers, and we all hung out over the weekend. So I was still embroiled with everything that was going on, and so it was a lot for the whole 7-year span. But I mean, it was it was great, and I mean it's still great because the Amtgard and the kingdom and everything else has grown. Maybe not necessarily numbers wise, but like immaturity and inclusion and getting rid of all of the trash, which I think is great. Um, I think it's a really good testament to the people who are doing things now, you know, such as yourself and more of the current monarchs. And yeah, you can take credit. She made a look for anyone who might not have seen.
I don't know that pops up unless I muttered to myself enough like now.
It's fine. That they have taken the ball that we have rolled and have picked it up and have ran with it, which I think is great. It was one of the reasons why I knew that would eventually happen. Was part of the reasons why 6 years ago I was pushing and fighting and having conversations over dinner after park and field, basically selling the rest of my park members that Floating Crown needs to happen, and it needs to happen now.
Yeah, so for those, to totally interrupt on this, for
No,
those who are newer, because that's usually how the population of Amtgard works, we, meaning Goldenvale as a whole, did not start off as a Floating Crown. When I started, the 8 years ago that I started, it was everyone, all of the officers pretty much existed in Massachusetts and Nashua, and they all were a part of that Goldenvale proper park that is now not named that for good reason. But yeah, it was pretty much like all the decisions were made in the spanning between like 7 to 13 people that frequented that field. No one else had really any say with anything, and that's just how it was.
Yeah, and the reason why that was, in case people were kind of wondering, like, how did this even happen? Like, what even went on, is while I was away in that 10-year U.S. tour that I went through, the people who, these are names that probably no one would really notice, but I'm going to recognize them anyways. People like Sir Amron, Sir Blackhawk, Sir Liz, Sir Balthazar, and many others that I am probably forgetting. Sir Amron. I already said Sir Amron. Anders. Anders is the other one that I forgot. It was people like them who grew the park so that this one offshoot of a city public park in Nashua, New Hampshire, was getting 75 unique people a month. Like, it had grown to this like crazy little local phenomenon that they had the proof, and they say, look, our one park has enough numbers to warrant kingdom status. And it went through, and they Burning Lands and the other Circle of Monarchs were like, okay, yeah. So that's how the static crown started. And then, people moved to New York and, start up little shires there. And then that slowly grows. And then you start getting, places like around Rochester, New York, and that whole kind of explosion. And then you get Canada, way up in Sudbury, and then people move to Toronto, and then that explodes, and it just grew from there. But to kind of get to, if people are wondering, like, well, why did it take so long? A lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot of people, a fair amount of people felt that they earned the status to call themselves kingdom. And irregardless of numbers dwindling, people moving, people moving away, people getting older, kind of finding other interests and everything else. Yes, excellent shout out to Heronshire. That kind of started all of upstate New York.
Yeah, because let's see, like Caradoc definitely branched out from there, and then from Caradoc, like my brain, Anwin like became a thing, and then there's been all these offshoots.
Yeah, exactly. So you still had this group of people who still felt that the kingdom was still kind of theirs, that it was something that they earned, and that they should still kind of benefit the rewards of. And they were happy to go and help out other groups and have, duchies and baronies and everything else under them. But it was kind of one of those like, well, we did it, so other people can do it. And, as kind of time went on, it just, at least for me, it just seemed outdated. All of Canada, and congratulations to now the Kingdom of Nine Blades. They were off trying to get their own kingdom status, and we had developed a really good rapport with Heronshire and all of the groups in New York. And it was just kind of time where it was like you were saying, these 7 to 13 people, the entire quote unquote kingdom proper could fit inside my bedroom here.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it's just, there was some burnout that was going on, and it was just kind of like time of just being like, you know what? We need to do this. This isn't sustainable. There were talks about like, okay, well, we'll have floating crown, but it will just be the states in New England.
Which, not for nothing, still wouldn't get most of the population of Goldenvale.
I know. And I fought against that, because I was like, we need to include New York. I know that there are some rumblings that they want to start their own principality and get their own kingdom. If they want to do that, great, they still can. But these are people that every time we have a local coronation, every time that we have a local mid-reign, they always come out to us. They are like our best neighbors. And these are people that we have helped foster as Amtgarders, and we have really great relationships and friendships and everything else with them. They need to be included in this. And so thankfully, one of the good things about us having a small amount of people is I only had to lobby a small amount of people.
Definitely makes it easier when your voting pool is so many people.
Exactly. So I really got to kind of talk to people and listen to what concerns that they have, and kind of voice my view of what the kingdom could be. And we had a lot of work from my former squire Ngenga, who made the actual Kapora. I will be the first to admit it was not perfect, but that's one of the benefits of the Kapora, is that it's a living document and it can get changed and it can get updated. But I knew it had to start somewhere, and the first step is always going to be the messiest. But it was just one of those things, like we just got to do it, and kind of the stars aligned, and we made it work, and here we are, and here you all are.
As a note, like just so people don't think it's like, oh, to get Crown Knight status, you have to do a massive change in how the kingdom is run. No. You became a Crown Knight before that.
Yes. I think I was a Crown Knight for 3 years before then.
Pull up one's own org, check date.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going up to my own Amp Wiki right now. We're going to do it live.
Oh, Amp Wiki, yes.
Yeah, let's see. I got knighted. Oh my goodness, my Amp Wiki is terrible. It doesn't have anything. I don't know. Look it up in New York. 10 points for the first person who tell me when I got knighted.
Oh no, points?
But I mean, but still, like, it's getting the, unfortunately, and this is kind of getting into the knighthood, which is, you know, the whole basis of this whole series. Unfortunately, the hardest thing about getting knighthood has nothing to do with knighthood. It's getting masterhood, which is a
2011.
See, look, our prime minister already putting in work, which is
Which
great.
I think, I wasn't looking at 2 screens messing me up.
So there you go. It was 30 years after I got knighted before, you know, we did this. Yeah, no, like you don't need the whole knighthood thing. You don't need some giant landscape changing for knighthood. I mean, to be perfectly honest, after you get that masterhood, which is probably about 95% of the work, I honestly feel you need 2 things. You need to not be a jerk, and you need to be generally a good person. And number 2 is you need to give back to Amtgard as a whole. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to hold gigantic events. Even just being available on a personal level, for, you know, we're just going to say Knight of the Crown because this is where we're at right now. Being available for other officers when you're not in office, being available for other parks. You know, even if you're not in office, if somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I have a question about X," on, you know, willing to put the time in to be a resource rather than just, you know what, let's just shunt them off to somebody else. Let's just, you know what, I'm not an officer right now. Go to Kingdom and just, you know, kind of pass the buck that way. You know, and those 2 things really kind of set the tone for actually all 4 paths of knighthood. You know, because regardless of what you might be, quote unquote, looking for, they all still apply. You know, whether you want to be a great sword knight and, you know, start teaching classes and helping younger people. If you have this sick move or whatever it happens to be, share it. Don't just be like, well, no, this is my path to getting warlord and sword knight.
This is the one thing I can do. I cannot share it, or someone
right,
else
exactly. That's not a thing. And in kind of like in preparation and thinking about this interview and what I wanted to kind of talk about, one of the kind of core things that if anyone who watches this, whoever, if you get nothing out of this, but if you just get the idea of you can start being a knight right this second. You don't have to wait. Like if you're like, hey, I want to be a knight, be a knight. Like give back to Amtgard, give back to your local communities, help foster growth and new people, and just be a good general ambassador for yourself, and kind of Amtgard as a whole. You don't need some moron who got elected to tap you on the head and say, okay, now you can be knightly. You're approved. And you don't need some other, you know, people with white belts to say, yes, you know what, now you're good enough. Because one of the things that I usually tell other people who got knighted after me, that, because usually they'll be, you know, kind of like this whole Amtgard knightings are weird. They're like, they're like Amtgard's versions of weddings.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of stuff, and there's a whole ceremony, and there's walking down like a little aisle, but instead of an aisle, like there's other knights. Like it's this whole thing. But before all that, I will usually try to sit down with the person who is going to be knighted, and I would basically explain to them and say, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. There is no knightly version of yourself, because that was one thing that I was thinking of when I had, you know, qualled and as some people would say, waiting to be knighted, which I can't stand. It's not a deli line. You don't just go, I have my masterhood, I'm just going
I
to
would
wait
like
here.
my sub of knighthood, please.
Yeah, exactly. I would like 1 pound of knighthood. Doesn't work that way. But I found myself thinking, when I'm a knight, I'm gonna do A, B, C, and D. Like I'm gonna like be some sort of different person, or, you know, kind of exalt myself beyond who I am. Like I'm gonna like, knighthood is not a metamorphosis. You're still who you are, and that's who you should be inspired to be, because that's good enough. You know what I mean? Like who you are at this moment is, if you know, you follow kind of like those 2 basic things of giving back and generally just being a good person. That's all you need. You don't need to be. It's not. We're not Pokemon.
You gotta catch them all.
You don't have You don't have a knight evolution. It doesn't happen. You know. So if you get to a point where you're like, hey, I'm getting close to being recognized as a knight, and other people are saying that I should go for this, and my, you know, if you're squired to a knight and they start kind of doing these subtle little, hey, you know, you should start thinking about if you're gonna get knighted, blah 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 blah.
Brian.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. Who you are at that point is good enough. Like it's fine. Don't stress over it. So if you're watching this and you're, you know, 2 years in and you're really excited that you got your 4th Order of the Rose, you know what? Like, you can still be a knight as of this point. You know, just follow the basic tenets of what being knightly, as far as the Amtgard standards go, and just be it. Like, you don't have to wait. You don't have to get someone else's approval. You know, and I'll be perfectly honest. I mean, let's be real. There are people that will, there are systems in place where when someone is qualled, more often than not, much to my annoyance, the monarch will go to the knight circle and ask them for votes. I personally can't stand this, because I don't think a person can be boiled down to a yes or no. We're a lot more complicated than that. But if you start now and you start getting into this mindset of like, I am a knight, and you just start doing it, you just start being a knight, irregardless of what color belt you have, or even if you have a belt, people are going to take notice, and people are going to, that's going to leave an impression. If you think, oh, all I have to do is just grind this masterhood to death, and I'll deal with being, you know, I'll deal with the social stuff later. Like, let's just get this knighthood, let's just get this masterhood now. Like, people are gonna notice, you know, and and that's when knights will give, sometimes give that, you know what, not yet. They'll vote no and say not yet. That's where you get into that kind of stuff, where you get other people who are just good general people. They give back, and yeah, those are people that, for good or bad, however you want to say it, because some people like the fact that knights get to vote, some people don't, such as myself. They'll make note of it, and they'll say, yeah, they're already there. Like, we just gotta have the silly little ceremony and give out the presents, and then it'll be official. They're already there.
That's right.
So.
How do you, because there is such a stage to get to knighthood, in comparison to how you just explained basically being a knight without the belt, as in just following the virtues that would lead to something like that. Mm-hmm. How do you, I guess, assuage the need for awards and recognition that happens so frequently in our game? It's like, oh God, this piece I did didn't get me a dragon, or that giant feast I made didn't get me a rose. Like, how do you kind of get someone to kind of cope with that dejection that tends to happen?
It, like I said, the hardest part about attaining knighthood is attaining masterhood, and unfortunately, it's a grind, and what I would say has nothing, is not directed at the person. What I'm about to say is directed to everyone in their belted family, everyone in their company, even just friends or their local officers. The best thing that you can do for those people is be an advocate. And it's one of those things where, I just saw not too long ago, the monarch and prime minister were saying, hey, if there are people who deserve awards, let us know. That is so important, because as a monarch, being a monarch is not to go off on a tangent, and I can go off on tangents.
Go ahead.
It's one of my skills.
I know.
It's legit a part-time job. I probably devoted about 3 hours a day, every day, to something Amtgard related. And that's a lot of time. And because of the fact that the kingdom is so broad, and there's so many players, and there's so many new players, because those are the people, unfortunately, who get kind of lost in this shuffle of this giant machine that we have of a kingdom. That people would say, hey, you didn't recognize so and so, and I would look at them and I'm like, I don't even know who so and so is, but they would come up to you like agitated or annoyed that you're not entirely clairvoyant and you didn't just see everything that they've been doing, and it's really, really hard to do that. So my recommendation, the best thing that I could suggest is that if you see somebody who is working hard, and who is trying, and who is putting in the effort and the work and the passion and everything that it takes, be an advocate for them. It doesn't take very long, and you don't have to try to make it about yourself afterwards and tell them that you did it for them or anything like that. Like, just that, don't be that person. But that's the best thing that I could recommend, because it does suck. and I've been kind of quote unquote subjected to it myself. You know, I've been sitting at 10 dragons for about 6 years now. And, you know, I understand that like me being away from everything has kind of, you know, it's not something that's mine. I'm not expecting, you know, a monarch to just be like, well, you don't have to do anything, so we're just going to give you masterhood.
Oh, jeez, yeah.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, I understand where it can be frustrating, and even getting to that point, like even going through can be incredibly frustrating. But what's going to get you through, because for a perfect example, even for myself, for Orders of the Smith, I am currently at 8 right now, and like there were times where my last reign as champion, I ran an entire 6-month long storyline that began with the players in the quest line investigating the burglary of an elven jeweler, and that ended in, you know, this whole thing where there was a Dracolich and he was trying to put his soul into a baby and to reborn and become a godlike creature. Oh yeah, this is this whole thing. And like it was just kind of like glazed over, you know. And if I believe something like that quote should have qualified me for a 10th Order of the Smith, for, you know, kind of that long of a quest line and everything else. But that's not the reason why I did it. Would it have been cool? Sure. But I think one of the things with masterhood that you need to really strive for, is something that you're incredibly passionate about. So that if the Circle of Monarchs just all of a sudden just went up and said, you know what, these award things are more problems than they're worth, and they cause way too much drama, so we're just done. We're not having it anymore. There's no more nights. There's no more awards. We're just doing things. What would you still be doing? You know, what would you be passionate about? What would you be willing to teach on a Saturday or a Sunday night after field is over?
Right.
You know, what would you want? What sort of skills and experiences and knowledge would you want to share with the rest of your park during winter, when people don't want, you know, to be fighting all that long? I think that's the type of stuff that will get you through, because the value and the, I don't want to say reward, but the satisfaction is in the activity itself. You know, whether it's art or running quests or, you know, helping out and running events or running an office, like whatever it happens to be. You know, if we were in some sort of multiverse where Amtgard doesn't have awards, what would you still be doing? And that is the type of stuff that will get you through. You know, because if you are trying to, you know, if you're trying to grind through something like let's say roses, because someone's like, I want to be a flame knight because I heard from somebody that they're the most respected knight because they're in service to everybody else. So that's the one that I want. But deep down inside, you just really love fighting and ditching, and that's the thing that brought you to Amtgard. That's the thing that keeps bringing you back to Amtgard over and over and over again. There's a conflict there, so that, you know, you're you're doing events, and you're helping out, you're volunteering for crap positions, and you're doing all this stuff, and maybe because like I don't want to be a trash picker. So you kind of let it slide because you know what, there's a ditch line going on over there. I want to ditch, so I'm gonna go do that. You kind of let things slide, and all of a sudden it's like, but I was a thing. Why didn't I get an award for it? It can sour the whole experience.
Yeah.
And especially where getting master can be such a grind. Like, just find your niche, find your thing that you love doing, and just try to focus on that is what I would say.
That's right. Speaking of awards specifically, since that is a new thing, what do you think of the shifting away from crown points to crown actual ladder awards?
I can
And
understand
I guess
why.
we should probably break down what crown points were.
Yes. So how it worked is you needed to attain 4 quote points. And you got 1 point for serving as champion, monarch, prime minister, and you got 2 points for serving as monarch. And there was a weird thing where you could only get champion once.
Right, which is
Like, it was just this weird little clause. And also, there was a thing that if you got points. There was a duchy level position as well. I think it was Duke or Duchess, like that monarch.
right. That monarch
also
could actually
earn you
get exactly
like 1 point, but you wouldn't count as qualing unless you had 6 of them instead of the 4.
right.
Like, it was this whole thing. I kind of in a vague way can see what they were going for, because somebody could theoretically make 10 pieces of garb, irregardless of how long that they do it. Let's say they make 10 pieces of garb in a 1-year span. They could theoretically get 10 orders of the garb. I understand that this is very unlikely, and I'm not, don't at me, as the kids say, but just theoretically it could. But where the crown portion of it, you have a 6-month span, and you get 1 quote unquote achievement for it. So I can see why they didn't relate them 1-to-1, because you can do a lot more with the other paths in the same amount of time. So I could see what they might have been going for. We're saying, well, so why don't we make crown a little bit different? And so, but then they finally decided to do away with it. They made it much more simpler, much more streamlined, that people could follow and understand. I think it's better, simply because of the fact that you don't have to go through a rambly, weird explanation like I just had to.
To explain how to get from A to B.
Right, to explain why Crown Knights were different. The only thing that I think is going to take an adjustment period is understanding what terms are going to qualify for what orders. Because if they just do 1-for-1, they just say, "Oh, you were Kingdom Monarch because you're new and what have you. It's your first office and everybody loved you and you did a great job. Here's your first order of the crown."
Ow.
Like, that kind of stings. So I'm hoping that as long as we get into an environment where we can kind of gauge, okay, this is the amount of effort that was put in, these are the results, and this is how things kind of shook out. In that example, they're like, well, this should be order X. And I believe that when they created the Order of the Crown, the little 10 steps, that they have a guide like all the other orders. So I know that there was a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot. I know that there was some confusion and kind of some, I don't want to say inconsistencies, but when the transition happened, when I think it was last Fury, when it was, here is all of the Crown, Orders of the Crown to everybody, that there were some things that were kind of a little bit weird. But now that is over with, I'm hoping that as time goes on, the standards will become standardized. It won't be really a question of kind of like, well, what do we do here? Do we give Kingdom Regent their first Order of the Crown? Oh, I guess so, because it's their first. As long as we kind of maintain that, and kind of understand how it's supposed to work, I think it'll be fine. So.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of words.
Yeah.
Let's see. So I do have some questions that are formatted. I'm jumping all around in them because,
sure,
kind of what fits with what we're already talking about. Kind of focusing more towards office type positions. When I don't like that question. Why did I not read that one before?
Throwing it out, getting rid of it.
It's just gone. When do you think it's the most difficult being an officer? Like, what situations have given you pause being an officer, or actually a good thing would be like best and worst times while being in office?
The best times is when you are able to recognize someone for all of the hard work that they have done. That is the best. I love it. The thing that sucks the most is when, if you take this serious enough. Sorry, I've been rambling a lot. My throat's getting a little dry.
I have to take a beer break.
That's okay. Is when you have to, or not have to, or when you choose to put the office in front of like a friend. That is the worst part. Because, and I even remember this exact thing that even 6 years ago still annoys me to this day, and it's a real shame that it, quote unquote, had to happen. But when we said, hey, we're officially starting with Floating Crown. This is our Capora. These are kind of like the limits that we're starting out with. Excuse me. There was somebody who I considered a really good friend of mine, who was outside of that structure, who said, oh, we're going Floating Crown. I would really like to be Monarch. And there was a lot of support for them. They would have been great at it. But I couldn't support it because, irregardless of the person, I felt that with us bringing an entirely brand new system that is going to take years for people to get in a groove of and to fully understand, the last thing that we needed to do was to immediately break the rules and immediately just say, you know what, we really like this person, so we're just going to throw it out for personal feelings for how they are. And that really, really sucked. you know, the there was a there was like a long time when I didn't speak with them because I guess I don't know if they felt betrayed because I wouldn't stick up for them. Like this was somebody who, was a member of my company that I even had to have this kind of interaction with, because I chose to put the office and I chose to put the kingdom and what we were trying to do ahead of my personal feelings for them and how they would have done the job. And they've gone on and they've done amazing, and it's great to kind of like randomly see things that they are doing, and they're going and they're being the person who I always knew that they were. And again, it's kind of, yeah, that was really sucky. That was probably the worst part. So,
yeah. Having been someone that was on the outside of that, it was again hard because we were kind of. There was a lot of suddenly like, wait, what do you mean this can't? What? And then like it was bad to be newly able to vote and not exactly sure what to do, basically. Right. Or to still have to go through the waiting period of being able to vote, which was another thing.
Well, and that also was something where the reason why that happened, why there was that quote unquote waiting period or whatever you wanted to call it, was because we wanted to make sure that we wanted to crawl and then walk before we ran. We wanted to make sure that people were like, okay, this is kind of, it needed to, we felt that it needed to work slowly for people to understand what really was going on and to kind of get to grips with it and understand what was going on. Because I took it as, this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. Like, it's going to suck. I knew, and I even told people, before you vote for this, the first 6 months to a year are gonna suck. Because it's a huge radical change. People are gonna get really, really excited. Something that they've been wanting for such a long time is gonna be right there. And we're asking them to wait just a little bit longer. And they're gonna hate it. I'm like, but as time goes on, it'll be fine. We will work things out. There are people who will probably hate me to this day. But that's fine, because 6 years later, I don't want to say that I won, because it's not
a winning situation sort of thing.
Right, but we're in a, well, I shouldn't say we. I should more say you, as the greater kingdom as a whole. You're in a sustainable spot, and it's working. And there were some growing pains, and you guys have done an incredible amount of work to work through them and get out the other side. I honestly think for the better.
Yeah, the question I was going to have, like, to follow up was, like, do you think we're running now and not crawling? But that kind of answered it.
I think, I like to think for as much, as problems as every kingdom has, and don't let the internet or grumbly people who like to complain on the internet let you think otherwise. Every kingdom is a dumpster fire in their own way. I don't care. I'll argue with any member from any other kingdom. It's fine. But wait, where was I going with that? Oh, yes. And I like to think that it's a very confident walk. It's a okay. All right, we got this going. We're there's still still stubbing toes and roots, and you know, every once in a while, kind of might trip over themselves, but it's going. I think it's still great, and you know, if people want to point to, well, the Kaplora constantly, you know, is getting changed and adjusted. It's a living document. It's never gonna be set in stone. It's never gonna be perfect. There will always need to be times when it gets looked at and it gets adjusted, and it will get old. And if it's not already, kind of voting for things seemingly every single month, I get it. I really, really do. But it's a process, and it's how people learn. It's how people grow. If we just decided to just take this snapshot moment in time and just like, no, this is perfection, this is just how we're gonna roll with it, like it would be really bad. So, you know, and not to try to get really, really big on things, but you know, even for what's going on right now in late August in 2020, we're still, even as a country, trying to grow and trying to adjust and right wrongs and make things better for everybody. And you know, it always happens. Change is inevitable. You're not gonna, it's as the whole, you can do the whole Thanos line all you want. You know, fight from it, run from it, but change comes no matter what. Yeah, it's gonna happen. So learn to live with it.
Yeah. Okay, now that we have properly grabbed some good hydration, water and likewise, I have a very direct question about knighthood, and it's kind of a trend that I see every now and then. Not consistently when people get awarded a white belt, it sometimes feels like they kind of retire from Amtgard, and I was wondering if that is something that you'd like to talk on at all.
Yeah, that is one thing that really bugs me, is when people are like, "Oh, you're a knight, you've won the game." It's like, well, what? Like, I mean, it goes back to,
And it goes against being a knight.
yeah, exactly, and you know how the people could sit there and be like, well, you're just a giant hypocrite because you got knighted, and then you know you made 40 crown, and then you just said, you know, F off, I'll see you guys twice a year at events, and like that's it. But like it's such a weird, I've noticed actually that the people who say that, like in kind of like a are non-knights. Because it's more, because there's an old saying that, you know, masterhood is a measurehood of skill, knighthood is a measurehood of character.
Right.
And for the people who are knights, and this standard is getting more and more true to what knighthood is supposed to be. And I can get in deeper in that in a little bit. The people who are knights don't retire from being good people. They don't retire from caring about, you know, Amtgard and talking and willing to talk to people about things, and are willing to share their experiences and their knowledge and everything else. And also, I would like to say, for the people who think that others have quote unquote retired, Amtgard is not a cult. I'm just gonna flat out say it.
It's important.
Yeah, and people's interests change. People have children. People, careers change and they move away. That I think it's really unfair to jokingly say that somebody, oh, you just up and retired and left because their life changed, or they have a new interest that they really are excited about and they really want to devote a lot of their time to. And you have to make a choice. There's only so many hours in the day.
Right.
And it's not like if somebody decides to be honored with becoming a knight, like they're not chained, literally they're not chained to Amtgard for the rest of their lives, and I would be willing to bet that if you brought up, I'm kind of going through the little Rolodex of knights in my area that I know, that if they would be at an event just to show up and be social, and somebody talked to them about whatever that they knew that they were passionate about, that they would be happy and willing to share their knowledge and experiences with them, like a perfect example, not to kind of like call her out or anything. I'm not really calling her out. If anything, I'm praising this person. The interview that was had before mine, with Dame Celia. If she is not regularly active, people could say that she quote unquote retired or quit the game or whatever kind of BS line that people want to put on there to make themselves feel superior because they're still in it or what have you. I would challenge to find her and to ask her about something about leatherworking that she would not want to engage in. And that she wouldn't be willing to talk about and be happy about, or any of the other arts that she excels in, or even something that maybe she doesn't excel in but she knows other people who do, to point them in the right direction or what have you. And even the same thing with my old squire, Sai, who was, I think, even the one before her.
Well, so we are going perfectly backwards right now.
Exactly. I'm not going through the entire thing because I couldn't name the other 6. Sorry, I just. But if you saw him and he was hanging out and you were like, hey, I heard you were a great quest person. I have an idea. Can I talk to you about it? I would be willing to bet that he would be like, if he had the time to do it, that you would get his attention, and he would be willing to listen and engage, give feedback. I wouldn't be surprised if he got super excited and really wanted to get involved, because that's the type of person that Tim is. Asking where all of your notes are and wanting to read them and like everything else. But yeah, like I think it's like I said, I think it's a little dig used by people who are not knights to kind of artificially give themselves a, well, I'm still here. Ha! Look at those. You know, it's like trying to like take down the quote unquote, elite knights and like trying to like take them down a peg. Like if people want to say that, about me, go ahead. I even refer to myself as a professional has-been as far as Amtgard goes. So like you're not gonna get me to cry in a corner or feel self-conscious about myself because of how I choose to spend my free time. But yeah, I'm not a fan, and I don't think it's real. I think it's just kind of something that people may say to make themselves feel good. So have at it.
Yeah. Kind of in line with that, obviously, in your mind, knights shouldn't necessarily be put on a pedestal.
Oh, absolutely not. Knights are flawed individuals, and I mean, I would challenge anybody to really be honest and find a knight that has been 100% knightly 100% of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, even myself, like I'll even talk about it. There was a time years ago where in the old days of V7, I'm gonna get a little ranty about Bard because all you Bard fans. So for people who don't know, way back in V6 and V7, Bards used to have a spell called Charm or Charm Person, whatever it was, and part of one of the reasons why I can't stand Bard is because there are people who, as knights, or who became knights, would play Bard specifically to use Charm Person on someone who might not be athletic or overweight or what have you, and quote charm them to do jumping jacks and laugh at them.
Oh God.
And so that's a problem that I have with Bard, the fact that it just creates negative player experiences for stupid things. And honestly, if you were to ask that person today about that, I would imagine that he would be embarrassed about it. People can do dumb things when they're young, and that's why thankfully people will grow and get better and mature. But anyway, so the other thing with Bard that I couldn't stand, and I even forgot the question, but I know roughly where I was going, so I'm sure I'll get there.
Okay.
Oh yes, knight behavior and myself. There was Bards could get druid spells. Like 6th level Bards could take 5 points of druid magic.
Right, I remember that barely.
And one of the spells that was particularly troublesome was the spell called Commune, where you could sit your back to a tree, you could chant Commune over and over and over again, and you couldn't be affected at all from anyone within like 20 feet of you. You had to be beyond 20 feet in order to affect them. So there was just like dumb stuff that Bards would do because they could get medium shields. So they would sit by a tree, hiding behind the shield so you couldn't shoot them with a bow, and they would start casting spells at people, and when anyone got close, they would just commune into the tree. And it would just create this horrible, awful experience. Now, I was playing something. I forget what it was. It was it was at a Fury. I know that because I remember the old park that we were at. And for the sake of saving them, I'm not going to say who it was, but they were doing this, and I got so mad that I frustratingly hit them with my dagger. It's like, what? Just stop doing this! And I got really upset, and I stormed off. That is not something that any knight should do. It is not something that anyone. We shouldn't be. That's not acceptable behavior. And I knew it immediately. Like as soon as it was over, I was like, I shouldn't have done that. God damn it! And I beat myself up over it. And it took actually a couple years before myself and them actually had a conversation about what it actually was about, because they just thought that I hated them.
Oh no!
And just who they were and what they were about, I just decided to take it out on them for whatever reason. And you know, we talked about it. We had a conversation, and he understood where I was coming from, and we just kind of like met eye to eye. We're just kind of like, okay, cool, it's over. We both understood what happened, and we just kind of like let it go. And yeah, so like they're not, knights are not infallible. People, and especially when you get things like and again, here's a perfect story of knights being people, and people with agendas, not horrible agendas. Let's just calm down. Like, just slow
You saw
down.
the face, you had to respond to it.
Yeah, exactly. So my first reign as monarch back in 2008, there were a bunch of people who were called for knighthood. And I knew, for some reason, I decided to just set a standard for myself where I said, I only want to bring in one new person of a particular path. And that's it. I want kind of like them to have kind of like the spotlight as being the new Flame Knight or the new Crown Knight or what have you. And as I'm sure that people have noticed, I am not a fan of up and down votes for knights. So I legit had phone conversations with everybody. And the knights still voted because they were set in their ways. And there was somebody who, so there were two people in question. Both would have been the quote, the Flame Knight, as it was. One of them was very popular with the knights at the time. The other person wasn't as popular, wasn't their buddy. But person number two had done way more work to affect their greater community. So when I got sent their votes, person number one got a quote, yes vote from the Knight Circle. Person number two got a no vote from the Knight Circle. And I looked at that and I went, no, I'm doing the other thing because this is how I feel. And if I'm going to do this, if my name is going to be, quote unquote, on this scroll, or if I'm going to stamp it, it's going to be my decision, and it's going to be something that I'm going to have to live with. And it caused a problem. There were knights that were so outraged that they were trying to pass like a corpora change or a bylaw that a monarch could not knight people unless they were also a knight.
Oh God.
And because they were just so outraged that their plan of getting their buddy knighted didn't work. And I had to have a conversation for about an hour and a half with that person's knight who wasn't going to get knighted and explain the entire thing. I'm just like, look, we have candidate A and candidate B. Candidate A is your squire. And yes, has done good stuff. But candidate B, who may live off in a faraway place away from you that you don't know very well, has done about 4 times as much for the kingdom and their local community. If you take your personal biases out of it, there is no contest. And like it was, yeah, got into a whole thing. I was planning a knighting ceremony for Sir Blackhawk. I was awarding him the Knight of the Sword. It was a really big deal. It was his 4th belt.
Mm-hmm.
And I explained how I wanted to do it, and there was a knight who legit said, "You can't do that. You just can't, because it's an insult to all of the other sword knights that have come before." Blah, 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 blah. Like, it's just, yeah. So I had knights trying to convince me, that I shouldn't do certain things because other knights from other kingdoms would come to our event to challenge them, and it would really be embarrassing to that person, and I shouldn't put them through that.
Jeez.
And I was just like, no, this is the right thing to do. And yeah, so again, not getting into individual people, but there were monarchs. This is back in the day, who would knighted somebody because the circle told them to, and they just wanted to knight somebody.
That's fair.
And it was just, and I was even one of the people who was like, "Are you sure you really want to do this? Like, are we like, really?" And it was like, "Yeah, but I really want to knight somebody." And that's the only person that the knight circle said that they would allow to get knighted. It's like, blah.
Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Right, exactly. So, and it was, and thankfully, and I understand that people may be taking these stories and going, "Oh my God, knighthood is entirely corrupt. This is all stupid and crazy. Get rid of all of it." You got to realize this is like 15 more years ago. Like, that type of behavior and stuff is gone. It is not, thankfully, it is not a part of things.
Yeah.
But again, it's also one of those things where I would still look at those people and say, you know what, they might not, like, let's say for example, that person who was monarch, who was just like, "I'm just happy to knight somebody." They went on to get knighted themselves, and they absolutely deserve it, without question, 100%. Because even though that they made a decision at the time, they didn't get knighted for crown, but they were still, even though they weren't perfect, they're still a great value to the kingdom and Amtgard as a whole, and they completely 100% are worthy of the kind of social status that Amtgard has decided to grant knights. So yeah. So even though they're not perfect, they can still be good people.
Definitely. Just, I was hoping to just mute something in the background quickly, and it wasn't that easy.
What's that?
Just Discord popping up and probably coming through the recording. So it's like, whatever. Everyone can listen to my Savage Worlds organization group going on. How many, kind of going along those lines, do you have it's a weird accomplishment to be like, do you have a number of how many people that you've knighted? Do you know how many people you've knighted off the top of your head?
No.
Believe me, I didn't do the research because that would take a second.
Here's all right. I'm gonna do a mental checklist of the people that I have conducted knightings for. Actually, one of them doesn't count because even though I did the knighting ceremony, I wasn't the monarch who approved it.
Quiet mental count.
Yeah. I want to say about 7 or 8. 7 or 8 that I can think of. Because with the 4 reigns, and this first part's going to sound ridiculous. My first reign, I knighted 4 people during one fury.
Oh my god.
It was so good.
Were they all different types of knight?
No.
Okay.
There were 2 flames and no serpent.
Okay.
I had the honor of being able to knight Sir Bowen.
I saw that one.
Yeah, there were
my first Kingdom event, and I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Who are these people?
Exactly.
Yeah. There were a couple others, but I know that there were some that Sir Yoshi down in Crystal Groves. That is an entire story that I will not get into here. Find me at an event, and I will be happy to share it. Let's see. I think that there were a couple others that I approved the knighthood, but I wasn't able to make it to the actual event. So a lot of times it would be either their actual knights who would, conduct the ceremony and do everything else, or another knight that was local on hand conducted the ceremony. Because that was the situation for when my first squire, Sai, got knighted. The monarch at the time, Quinn, she wasn't able to get up to Battle of the Dens way up in Sudbury. But he was my squire. There was no way I was going to miss it.
Right.
So I just took the reins and went and handled the whole thing. And it was great. And I look forward to hopefully doing it again. And yeah.
Okay. Let's see, something. Well, I'm talked a lot about knights. We can talk a little bit about leadership. What do you think is the best thing an officer can do to be the best officer for their people, either local level, kingdom level? Do you think there's much of a difference between the two, honestly?
Now, well, no, there still is. But excuse me while I chew on ice. Communication is the #1 thing that I think is important. Not only let's say for a monarch position, one of the things that I always tried to make sure that was happening was the 3 other officers who were in office with me. that we were all on the same page, that we all, even though we might disagree on things, that we all had each other's backs if need be. That if somebody had a question about why something was happening, that there was a consistency. Because sometimes something can happen at an event, and somebody may want to know why something happened at an all thing 2 months ago. Like this was a really big Kapora change, or, so-and-so got suspended for 3 months and they can't be here at this event. Like, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people have a tendency to, rather than go to the particular officer in mind, they just go to any kingdom officer. Because they're just like, a kingdom officer is a kingdom officer, so I want answers. So I would like to try to make sure that we all were kind of aware of what was going on. I even think it's also really important for, even for monarchs to make sure that their regents know what's going on, because you never know when something can happen, and that regent needs to step in so they're not sitting there lost in the dark of like, hey, so there's this stuff going on, let me copy and paste you all of these PMs. Because that would be
very important.
Yeah,
Just going to say very important.
So, and also communicating with the populace. I would say on a local level, it is easier because you get to remove the evil that is text-based communication. Because cadence and how people word things and body language and everything else matters a ton. Makes a huge amount of difference. So being local and being able to communicate with people face to face, even like this, even through video.
Yes.
It is important to try to communicate as much as you can, be as transparent as possible. If you have a major decision, don't announce your major decision until you've at least had a full night's sleep. It sounds weird and it may sound a little hokey, but you can wake up the next day and maybe have a much more diplomatic response, or may have phrased it better, or are not all full of whatever your emotions happen to be at that time, and can give a much more, I don't want to say unemotional, but a much more kind of like, here are the facts, here's why we are doing this, this is the way that things are going. So I usually try, like whenever there was a major problem, and people were like, hey, Monarch, we want to know what's going on. Even though I might have known what I wanted to do or I wanted to say, in the moment, I wanted to give myself some time to kind of further process and get my thoughts in order, and have a good night's sleep and just tackle it the next day. One of the things that I try to think about, maybe some people might think that I'm being not serious enough, because there are some people, and God love them, who take Amtgard very, 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 very seriously. And humor can sometimes not be had, especially if you're in office. But one of the things that I would kind of tell myself, and if I ran for office tomorrow, I would be telling myself the same thing, that if a decision is not preventing you or not preventing somebody else from nerds hitting nerds with foamed weaponry, is it really that major of a deal? So, because there are a lot of times when and I understand that people might be like, how could you have that attitude over my 8th rose that I got snubbed on? And I understand, and I get it. Believe me, I get it. But it would help me stay sane, and it would help me realize that sometimes if I made a wrong decision, hopefully it wouldn't be the end of the world, and to be kind of okay with either making a mistake or doing something that not everyone is going to be happy with, which is always going to happen. I would like to see any monarch whose entire populace loves them throughout their entire reign, because I like being known who liars are. But yeah, like just but back to the core kind of like tenet of what you were saying. Don't make rash decisions. It's not worth it. It's better to make a, I don't necessarily want to say the right decision, because you never really, there are some right decisions, you know, if removing terrible toxic people, yes, that can easily be a right decision. But something that's a little bit more nuanced, it might not be the right decision for all people at all times. But give yourself the time to fully think about it, and when you do communicate it with people, be as clear and as plain as possible. Explain yourself, especially why. If you can provide context, do so. Because when people are just scrolling through Facebook and they see that you made a decision about something, and they're, you know, reading it in between something, who knows what, they saw a notification, they just looked at it. The context can get misconstrued, and they can take what you wrote and twist it around and get it all sorts of mixed up. So really, truly important things, I would say, if you're communicating something to a particular person, like let's say, for example, somebody had a problem in another kingdom, they came over to Goldenvale, and they're like, here is this situation, here is how it might affect things. Because it's still a part of my Amtgard life. Mm-hmm. For something kind of like that, I have a situation in mind, but I don't, it's a big topic and I really don't want to get into it. I would say anything really major, try to have the communication, not through IM. I know people like to do it so they can have a recorded, you know, gotcha, here's what everything was said.
Here's how it looks when I edited it down to the things that make me look good and exclude what the other person said.
Right. But I mean, even trying to communicate as much as you can, as face-to-face as you can, I think is a huge benefit. Again, when you have to communicate something to wide amount of people, be as very plain and as clear and as transparent as you can be. Like I said, try to provide context or even previous precedent so that people will know, oh, okay, this isn't just something that happened once before, or this is something that has happened once before, and this decision is not coming out of nowhere from someone who didn't make any sort of thought into it because I happen to not like it. So that is what I will say about that.
Okay. Kind of along those same lines of that, I know the code of conduct is something that kind of appeared kind of after your being in office. What do you think of the thing as a whole? Not to diminish the fact that it's done a lot of good work and made it a lot easier to get rid of the toxic people we've already kind of touched on here and there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that in and of itself has been a huge boon. I know that there are some people who are no longer a part of Amtgard who are probably really, 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 really mad at it. But I'm like, I understand that you might have been having fun with your friends and maybe it was at other people's expense in a really bad way. But you know what? Things are hard enough for people that their pastimes and how them enjoying Amtgard, other people should not get in the way of that and ruin the experience for them for whatever reason. And I'm just kind of talking about minor things. Well, I should say non-violent things. Let me put it that way. We should have no place for any sort of real, actual, like, crimes. Those people should be gone. You know, and they can find something else to do. They'll be okay. There's not a, Amtgard is not a live stream. It's not like people can take it as, kind of a lifestyle, and I get it. For nearly a decade, I did. But if it wasn't around, people could still find ways to pass their time, and for the benefit of everybody else, I think it's beneficial. It makes things very clear, and there's not a lot of ambiguity in regards to it. Because sometimes you can get standards that were different for different kingdoms. And just kind of like laying all that out, and kingdoms sharing like suspensions and bannings and stuff cross borders. I get it. I was in a situation where initially I didn't agree with it, because I kind of thought at the time, well, conduct that may have happened over at your place, those two people are not at my place. Only one person's over in my place.
Right.
So why should I punish them when the elements that created this are not the same? But now I get it. I get why it's there, and it's a good thing. So yeah, I'm all in favor of it.
So we're gonna pick up with some like I was like, my brain was like, happy fun time things. It's like, not really the phrasing I want, but okay.
Sure.
We're trying to focus on some good bits. What are 3 things that you would learn on the path to knighthood that you think everyone should kind of learn? Whether that be a knight. I mean,
like from a previous night?
Actually, yeah. What are lessons that you picked up from other knights that have been proven beneficial in getting to knighthood and while being a knight?
Let's see. I would say
under one.
No. No, I definitely patience. Finding something that you enjoy doing, and just do that, because that's what will kind of keep you going. And also being okay with, like, how can I put this? Being willing and able at a moment's notice to be able to help others. That wasn't something that necessarily was said to me. It was something that I saw through action.
Okay.
Because I had this idea of running a demo at a local game store, and just kind of like have some weapons, and maybe have, like, a little mock duel, and we had a little small section of the store where people come up and ask questions and stuff. And my knight at the time heard about it, and he just goes, "Well, what do you need?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what do I need?" I'm like, I got the rule book, I got some sticks. And he was just like, no. Okay, what time is it? And I told him what time. I was like, all right, okay, I'm gonna be there. And, like, they showed up with, like, photo albums from, like, all of these previous events, more than just 2 single short swords. Kind of let people, like, look at the arrows and see how they are, and just kind of, like, took something that I just thought was going to be good enough. And it wasn't as a, okay, no, Akrith, you're doing it wrong. Here's what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
But being able to, at a moment's notice, just like, okay, here's how I can help. Especially for someone who is trying to expand and enrich Amtgard as a whole. And I'll be perfectly honest, the demo itself had, like, I talked to, like, 2 people. None of them ever showed up to field, and that's okay, because a lot of times it's more about the effort and being willing to getting into the habit of kind of normalizing doing things like that is sometimes more beneficial than just like, oh, I ran one demo once and we got 5 people who showed up and then they never showed up again. So kind of getting into that culture of willing to do demos and go to where like-minded people are. So yeah, that is what I will say about that.
That's right. What pieces of advice would you give someone that's trying to follow and climb the crown path, basically?
The crown path specifically. It is going to be so you're going to go through multiple reigns. Like, you're not going through one reign and getting qualified. Be prepared for every reign to be unique and different. If there are other officers, or other people who previously were in office. Utilize them. Don't just be like, well, I'm the officer now, so it's on me. So you have these resources. Definitely go and use them for challenging times, and there will be challenging times. You're gonna need to be prepared for things going horribly wrong. The ideas in your head that you fantasize that were gonna be amazing, it was gonna be awesome, and everyone was gonna love it, and then when you presented it, you got crickets, and nobody cared, and they just wanted to do their own thing, and they were just like, what? Just what? Can come on, man, you're holding up court for this? No one cares. You know, that's probably gonna happen unless you're a hell of a salesperson, and you find something that everybody loves and everybody is enthusiastic about. I even still have a cloak in my closet over there of like garb that I had made, one of the few pieces of garb that I've actually made, for a Final Fantasy themed reign. And I was so excited about it. There was going to be like materia that people could get, and they could like temporarily like upgrade classes and do all this other stuff, and it was going to be amazing. It was going to be great. And then nobody cared. And I was like, cool, all right, well, I guess just go about your Amtgard business then. And I had to be okay with it, and I had to do the rest of the reign and not just be bitter that people decided, you know, their fun was not necessarily what I tried to force on them. Or, you know, it's okay. Like, letting people enjoy their own things is fine.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like, you're going to have to realize that, you know, people are going to have views, and you can't be sitting there on your side of the screen going, your fun is wrong. You know, like, come on. You know, and there are going to be times when, like, for a perfect example, my time as regent was like, it was like depressing, because I was like trying to reach out, and I was trying to engage, and I was trying to get challenges stuff and get people going, and no one seemed to care. It honestly felt like people were just like, who are you?
Yeah.
You're not this person, this person, this person. They're the real regents. You're just the person that we have to deal with for the next 6 months. And it really felt shitty. You know, but that still doesn't mean that you can just say, all right, well, people don't like what I'm doing, so we're just gonna half-ass it from now on. You know, you signed up for a position. It's not always going to be fun. Prime Minister is the most thankless job that Amtgard has. It's just
at any level.
Yeah, at any level. It doesn't matter what it is. Shire on up. You know, they're not. If your idea of getting to knighthood and having a great time doing it is through crown, it'll be a bit rough. But on the flip side, you know, one of the things that we talked about earlier that was one of my favorite things in the world is giving out awards to people who deserve it. You know, and I wasn't I wasn't directly the person who gave it out, but I was on the officer. It was my last term as monarch. Even though that my regent gave it out, I still felt a part of it when it happened. There was somebody who, I don't want to say had been overlooked, but who had not achieved a certain level in the thing that they loved the most. And there were people who would dismiss this individual and talk down about them and just like, oh, it's so and so, they don't deserve it. But my regent felt differently, and I agreed with them. And when that award happened, it was the greatest thing. Like there were the joy that that person felt, the reactions of court in general was very positive. And I mean, there were still people. There were the people who were naysaying, who stormed out of the feast hall in disgust. Just can't believe this. How dare they get a piece of paper about a fictional thing? And I understand that some people will probably be saying, "Oh, Akrith's a jerk. He's dismissive of awards." But that's not what I'm getting behind. But that was great, and those moments make all the rest of it worth it. You know, and there are times when being in office sometimes feels like I'm just here because I'm the only person who raised my hand, and I'm the only person who was willing to say, all right, nobody else wants to do it, but I'll do it. You know, there are some people who are like that. People who have these traits are generally knightly. I'll just say that. You know, and while sometimes a reign might feel like a burden, you know, because nobody else wanted to be champion. So now I got to run all the stupid battle games for 6 months. I'm going to do weapon checks, and I don't like doing weapon checks. And I got to run this dumb...
I have to be responsible for stuff, and I need to make sure Amtgard happens at an Amtgard field.
Yeah, and I got to run a tourney, and I've never run a tourney before. This is all stupid. But no one else did it, so whatever. You know, try... Sometimes it can be rough, but try to find how some way you can get through the next 6 months. So, you know, it's it can definitely be a grind where it's not like a physical taxation like trying to become a warlord is. Mm-hmm. It can definitely be an emotional and a mental grind more than anything. But I will say this, there are little sparkles of wonderfulness that make the rest of it bearable. Not that I'm saying that anybody should do this just to experience this, but if you, as a monarch, probably one of the best, I don't know about highs you could get, but something where you realize, where you kind of like just sit back and you're just like, whoa, this one thing that I did, which might have just been signing a scroll and saying, okay, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Promote a park like on their home turf.
Oh man, that
And
would.
oh my God, like, and especially for something that has been, quote, overlooked, or, people not being advocates for them, or, even just the little things like shire to barony can mean so much. And when and if you're in that spot, it's just great. It's the greatest thing, you know. Um, yeah, that's those are the little pinpricks of light in a vast sea of darkness.
Speaking of vast sea of darkness, what do you
Is Bowen
think?
here?
If, what?
Is Bowen here? Did he show up?
No. Um, Good question that we had from Pix in the
Mhm.
comments to me. Following up kind of what you were talking about of advice, what's the best way, or for you, what worked best to avoid burnout while trying to get through that occasion, very slog kind of path? Not to, again,
Mhm.
diminish it, but it is work. It is
Yeah.
very much work.
Um, you have to give yourself breaks. If you try to just like rush through and just go, here's my 3-year plan, and I'm just gonna do it. It's gonna be a thing, and just like, that's the worst thing that you could do. It's okay to just, you know what, I or even like go do other positions specifically to just try them out. Um, like doing little things which are much more focused can actually be a lot more fun. Like even things like, hey, I like, one of the things that I enjoy doing is making battle games. Not just kind of like rotating the same 5, and just kind of run them on loop and just say, hey, champion ring.
Yeah.
Trying to invent new ones and spice things up and everything else. Just like, even though it might not be thought of as a big of a deal, or you might not get the quote unquote credit or the crown order or what have you. Even just doing something like that, which, you're still being in office, but you're saying, you know what, I'm gonna still be in office, but I'm gonna focus on this particular thing, will help. I think will help a little bit. But if you try that and that doesn't work, just step away. It'll be fine. Like we've talked about, what Amtgard around here in the Northeast has been around for almost 30 years. It can survive without you for 6 months.
Yeah.
It'll be okay. If you have other hobbies, focus on them for a while. Like, just it's okay. It's not a cult. It's fine. No one's gonna come after you.
Exactly.
No one's, you're not gonna get banished. I know it can. I know it can suck if you step away and it feels like you're abandoning things. Like, oh, we have a small population and I've always been the regent. If I'm not the regent this term, what? But what happens? Because I'm always the regent. That's okay. It'll be fine. there are some things that will happen where sometimes some parks won't have positions filled. It happens. And you know what? If you're the monarch at that time, your plate got a little bit bigger, and it'll be okay. That's why these officer terms are only 6 months long. So that kind of potential burnout has a way to not be so terrible that you can get an influx of new people to do things. And if you're feeling that you're stepping away, it's only for 6 months. It's fine. You'll be okay. if yeah, you'll be all right. Believe me.
Okay, I think honestly the last question I'm going to ask here is best Amtgard memory, just in the span of everything.
Oh God.
Pardon me.
Best.
It is a big one, I know.
No, I know. It's okay. Well, there's two that really kind of come to mind. Okay, there's three.
How dare there be more than one?
I know, and I will let our illustrious moderator choose which one.
Oh God, that's me.
Yes. No, I get to ask questions of you.
No.
Flipping it around. It's a topsy-turvy interview. It's crazy. So either would be knighting my squire side.
Okay.
Running. There's a particular event or a quest that I ran for Fury of the Northlands, which was absolutely amazing. And the third one would be introducing the concept of Iron Quest with Sir Blackhawk.
Oh, they're all so good.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. This is why it's tough. Actually, wait. There's people watching here. You know what?
In
Pix.
the chat.
I'm calling on Pix. You have been here the entire time because you're wonderful. Which one do you want to hear more about? And you know what's going to happen for everyone who's here? She's not by the computer. So she missed all of it.
I am too here.
Oh, all right.
Well,
Calling your bluff.
Damn it.
And I would like to hear about introducing Iron Quest.
Okay. So, Sir Blackhawk and myself, this was 20.
oh God.
Wait. 2010? It's like 2009, 2010. He's always been big into food. And this was like when Iron Chef first happened.
Right.
And he was like, I really like this idea, but I want to make it questy. And I don't know. And we're sharing a car ride on some random thing. As friends do. They take cars places. I just said that. It's just kind of like, I got this mental image of a couple friends dragging a car along on a leash down the sidewalk. Anyways, so I came up with this idea. I was like, well, what if we give people certain elements, and we just say, you have 15 minutes to run us through a portion of a quest. It could be the beginning, middle, end, whatever they want to do it. Let them be creative. And they just have to incorporate all of these aspects in that 15-minute, mini quest. We're going to utilize the camera. This is the entire quest in that much space. So what we came up with was, and the teams can be any size. We didn't care if it was 3 people. We didn't care if it was 30 people. It doesn't matter, because 3 people can run a good quest. It's not how many people you have. It's the content of the quest itself. But anyways, we gave them an NPC. So like the name of an NPC that they had to incorporate. We gave them a prop that they had to use. And I think we gave them, I want to say that we gave them like a line of like dialogue or something along those lines. And also, in order to make it feasible logistically, we gave them random locations around the site. So like we had just like a little bag, and we were just like, you got this one. And if anyone remembers the old Fury site at the YMCA Camp Massapog, the people who ended up winning had the beach.
Oh wow!
Like that's all that they had.
Okay.
They had a beach on a lake and like a dock, and it was just kind of like, okay, there you go, be inspired. And we gave them, so all of the team captains met up on a Friday night, and Blackhawk and I were just like, here are your parameters, and go. And on Sunday, we're gonna go through them, and we're gonna kind of judge them all. We let them know that what we were judging them on. Standard stuff. Creativity, how they use the elements that we gave them, whether or not the story and what they were trying to convey actually made sense, or whether it was just kind of random, shoddy stuff. And overall fun. We ran ourselves through it. I think it was like us 2 and 2 other people, and we would go to a particular site. We told them in kind of like what order we were going to be doing them, and yeah, we had like a little brief introduction, and then we just kind of like did it. I remember that there was one quest that was inside of a cabin that a lot of it was kind of like a bunch of shower stalls that had been decommissioned and weren't really used. And there was like a weird spider thing that was going on in the corner. Blackhawk actually scaled the walls of one of the shower stalls to get to the other one, because that's just what Blackhawk does. He does stuff like that. There was one that I remember people from the now Kingdom of Nine Blades. Shout out to Saint Sadar and all of his crazy, wacky people. They ran one that was amazing. It was hands down the best one. The only problem was that when we were done, we looked at our watch and it was 45 minutes long. So we were just like, yeah, we can't do that. So that was really cool. I think the year after we did something very similar, but we threw a twist at them where all of the judges could only play level 1 classes. And we all kind of cosplayed that we were brand new Amtgarders who didn't know anything.
Yes.
And that was pretty hilarious. And then we started getting involved with having other people run through the other quests at the same time. So it was almost kind of like a weird carnival where you could just go from stand to stand and experience all these different things that people have done. Blackhawk and I got to actually participate in one. I feel that we were robbed, but that was fine. It was fun again. It's something that still holds a huge place in my heart and my kind of like experience for Amtgard and kind of like the fun stuff that can happen. That if I ever go silly and decide like I'm gonna run an event bid or I'm gonna do something like that, get ready for a whole lot of Iron Quest related things. Just fair warning.
I would trust you to be able to do that very well.
Well, I would have to see how it would go. But yeah, so it was a heck of a lot of fun. I encourage anybody to try it, even locally, rather than try to compress it all into a single weekend. Run it over 2 weeks. If you have people that are like, hey, that thing sounds interesting, how could we do it? Have 1 week where people kind of set up kind of, how can I put it, set the parameters, as it were, and just, I don't know if you'd want to do 1 week, one team, but you could just make another day out of it. Give them an entire week, or set the parameters and stuff online. You could be like, okay, we're going to be releasing all of the conditions on Wednesday at 7. And you have until park, and we're going to, already have your teams already figured out. Again, small teams are not a bad thing. Mm-hmm. The team that won the very first year, I think, was a team of 3 people. 3 people on a beach. They were amazing. So yeah, I mean, you can even do it locally. And it's a great way that if you enjoy running quests and you enjoy kind of telling a story, which is a big part of Amtgard that I don't want to say gets overlooked, but can kind of get overshadowed by the quick and easy battle game. That it would definitely take you out of your normal, regular kind of formulaic mindset, and change it up, and it will make things different, and then you could establish like, hey, we're going to do this again in 3 months, but this time the winning team are going to be the judges, and
yes.
Kind of rotate it around.
On reward.
Like there's no reason why, just because we ran it at a kingdom level event, why it couldn't work for a smaller scaled Parker environment. Hype it up. Maybe if you advertise it that like, hey, this is something that our park is going to do. Maybe other local parks will be like, that just sounds fun. That just sounds like a fun day. Let's go and visit, and then we can just we don't even need to be contestants. Just let us run through them all. And like, I mean, heck, judges could even be really, really creative and make story plot hooks that each of the teams are threading together for one long narrative, kind of unreally beknownst to them. So like, structurally it'll make sense, but individually all the details could be really different, and you could be like, oh, I really liked this part, or I really like that part, and then if you're stuck in the middle, you're like, oh, I'm not the big boss thing, like, what are you gonna do? If you could say, hey, we have the big boss thing, and you make a very lame ending, it's gonna hurt. So just have fun with it. This is what this is supposed to be. It's supposed to be creative nerds hitting other creative nerds with foam weaponry. So just have at it.
Does anyone last? I mean, I already asked in chat, but I don't think anyone else has any further questions. Do you have anything else you want to add, Akrith?
Anything else I want to add? Paladins and anti-paladins should not be based on knighthood. There, I said it. Make it based on attendance. You get 200 credits in Amtgard. There you go. Paladin, anti-paladin, Belfavor. Knighthood doesn't seem all that special. Doesn't seem a little special now.
It's not bad.
You know, but I mean, there are some people who have their. But I earned this. I'm like, come on, let people enjoy things. It's okay.
It's a very good thing. Let people enjoy things is kind of like the message of of the whole thing this evening. Thank you for your time today, Brian.
Oh, you're very welcome.
We got a little bit over 2 hours of stuff, so that'll be good to post up later. Thank you to those that came and watched, and thank you for those that got through and watched the whole thing. Have a great rest of your day, and be with Amtgard.
I wish I had a prize for anyone who sat through the entire thing, but it's really tough.
Tildir did not listen by.
Yeah, I don't have this. I wish I had like a secret code word that would win you a prize somewhere else, but I don't.
That's fair.
So, okay. But thank you for Mac for running the series. And thank you for spending your time and talking with me and probably being like, oh, well, he's going to talk about this now.
Oh, yeah. It's my night. I know this.
Exactly. So, but yeah, go out there, have fun. Be knightly. Don't wait for somebody's approval to do so. You know, just do it now. Get it. So that's it.
Nice night, everyone.